Welcome to another installment of the Goddess Keys live podcast session. I'm titling this The Mysteries of the 10th Dimension, Notes from the Throne Room. So we are in a kingdom mindset over here on the Goddess Keys. We are in a kingdom mindset. And with that, we are in a Christic kind of algorithm. And we're keeping comments off because I want you to envision a throne room or a command center. You don't have everybody up in there like that, you are engaging in hours of study, contemplation, looking at the big picture of things. So that's the algorithm and frequency that I'm in. And I'm also here to share. In the spirit of this energy, it's interesting because we're going to be talking about binary code today. I've been going through a mass consciousness retrieval. And with that, I grow, I learn, and I get to share with the collective. We're in a interesting moment in time where, or actually it transcends time. We are in an interesting period of evolution where things are no longer stagnant. We might have a revelation or have a certain even body of work that we might move through, and then we come into another state of awareness or another state of growth. Sometimes, and what you're going to see more of, and if you don't see this in the folks that you connect with online who are speakers or who are sharing information, it's something to keep in mind, which is we're all in a very accelerated process of learning right now. We're all learning, we're all growing exponentially. So if you connect with somebody who feels as though they've reached the mountaintop or the summit, it's not even to judge them. It's just to say, well, they are at their particular throne room and, that's where they're going to stay. And some folks, especially folks that I think resonate with this content, are in a process of growth and evolution. So you might be looking to break certain glass ceilings, as they say. Or I wouldn't even say break any glass ceilings, maybe just transcend certain boundaries. Okay, so you're not going to hear me saying the same thing for a long period of time. You're going to hear me stay true to my essence, okay, my source. And at the same time, you're going to see me or hear me stretch myself, stretch the limits of possibility. You're going to see that or experience that with the sort of content I share on this channel. I don't really, I think a lot about algorithms, but I don't think about social media algorithms as much in the sense of preparing content for what will get the most shares or the most views. Maybe one day that will be a part of my journey. But with where I am at and the certain algorithm that I'm on and the certain rapid growth and evolution that I'm doing, the content that I put out is to share and to learn and grow with you. I'm going to learn and grow with you through this process. So I was getting some pretty interesting download content downloaded to me last night, and I was writing through it. I was meditating on it. I was moving through my own processes. And I felt vulnerable because I wanted to share it with the collective, but I was also like, oh man, like this is also going to contradict certain things that I've shared. But it's also like I'm learning and growing, and we get to listen to the content and experience it for ourselves. And one thing I've been really prioritizing the crown all of this year, the consciousness retrieval, the crown being consciousness, the crown not being, it's not about being the best for me. It's not about winning even. It's not about losing. It is about consciousness retrieval. That's my crown. It's about evolving, constantly evolving into a state in which I'm able to hold the frequential bandwidth of wholeness, unity, knowing what that means. Wholeness, unity. And I want to bring in a word. This is a South African word from the Xhosa tribe known as Ubuntu. I am because we are, or humanity to others. So I've been meditating on what a kingdom mindset is. Because let me tell y'all, after learning how to decode the Bible, I've been learning a lot of great secrets about things. I'm not going to say that they're hidden in the Bible. I just think that the way we've been trained to read the Bible, if we do pick it up, is very different than the way I'm reading it. So it's kind of like a fun book for me to read right now because I'm reading it with a whole new set of eyes. But there's this concept of this kingdom mindset. And there's this concept of what it means to be in your throne room. Also, what the Ark of the Covenant means. There's a lot of different mysteries that are coming together for me at this time. And whenever I've heard of the kingdom mindset, something within me never fully understood it or cared to understand it. Because I always saw it as being like you're either in or you're out. When people talked about this kingdom mindset, it's like you're either in the kingdom of God or you're out of the kingdom of God. And the same, I had some resistance as it related to the 10 Commandments as well. Because, you're getting these clay tablets from a sky father up above, right? Telling you the 10 things that you need to do to live your life. If you're a knowledge seeker, if you're always seeking to learn and grow, having 10 commandments imposed on you to follow from an abstract being that maybe you haven't actually experienced can feel kind of disempowering. And that's actually one of the tricks in the simulation. The ones who are going to be the open-minded ones in the sense of wanting to learn and grow and try out other experiences. When you hear the concept of things like kingdom mindset, or if you hear things related to the 10 Commandments and all of what that means, you might also turn off as it relates to it. Maybe it just doesn't even suit whatever your algorithm is. I'm speaking generally. I know everybody has a different experience with religion and spirituality, but there is a portion of folks out there that are naturally curious, and they may have referred to themselves as being agnostic. So they may not have spent that much time thinking about a kingdom mindset and what it means. Well, we're going to look at it a little differently. We're going to look at it from the experiences of the 10th dimension, the vibration of 10, as well as the monad, and moving through this energy of this earth being a part of a hidden curriculum, or this plane even. Let's even call it a plane. And actually, there are many different planes. But that let's just say that there are multi-dimensional realms within the planet, and there are many different hidden curriculums, okay? But there's always a subtext going on. There's what's spoken, and then there's what's going on beneath it. And this goes into this concept of simulation theory that many folks in technology have talked about, how this is a simulation. There's been studies related to it. I've written about it on Academia EDU around my thoughts and research related to simulation theory, if that's something you wanted to check out. But it's something that we can hear it logically or rationally, and we can hear that we're in a simulation, but do we accept it? It's a difficult thing to accept. It's that Truman Show moment. It's that moment in Truman Show. It's obvious to everyone else but you sometimes. So with that being said, when we think about the kingdom mindset and we think about the throne, it's within us. It's a part of our consciousness evolution. Our kingdom, our throne. The hidden curriculum actually shares with us, and if you look at the Bible and the imagery related to it, it actually shares with us the frequencies that we'll need to activate our pineal gland, our thalamus, our crown. It gives us the whole download. This is why we have this whole new age to Jesus frequency going on now. And let me pause, because I'm focusing on the frequency of 10 today. This can be a contentious number. 10. I have the comments off. I feel the tension. I can feel it. This is the nature of 10. You know where the 10th dimensional Stargate is in Iran. Abadan, Iran. Okay. And you can Google, you can take a look, or not Google. I know people, what do y'all use now? What, Gemini? Like a whole bunch of other stuff, not just Google. But you can search it. Okay. And you can find all of the different news reports related to what's happening on that side of the world. But it's known as being the 10th dimensional Stargate. When we think about 10, it has two numbers. It's the first number that we learn that has two digits. It's a joining together. You could call it a marriage between numbers, the 1 and the 0. You could call it the grafting of numbers. You can call it the weaving of numbers. It's the first number that we get introduced to that is not just one, it's not just single, it is double. This is mastery. This is where we get into the frequencies of mastery, 10. So, how does this change things when we maybe have been reading ascension texts related to how we expand in consciousness, how we evolve, and we're reading about how 10 represents the fallen architecture? It could maybe be confusing. And it's also affirming in certain ways, because we look at what's referred to as the 10th dimensional Stargate, and it's in a place where there's constantly war going on. And the 10th dimensional Stargate is known to be a place of warfare. This is where polarity plays itself out many times, is in the frequency of 10. Or it can be a joining, or it can be a merging, or it can be a grafting. It's up to you and your consciousness and what your consciousness is able to hold. In a universe ruled based upon the law of polarity, either or, this or that, good versus evil, black or white, you put two numbers together, that could be a beautiful growth, an evolution, a fertile period, or it could be a moment of tension. It could be a moment of warfare. Whether or not, it doesn't matter if it's on the more quote unquote beautiful part of the polarity or more of the quote unquote negative part of the polarity. Either way, it is creation. 10 is the portal of creation. This is your opportunity at 10 to bring something into creation. It's telling you with the numbers merging 1 and 0. It was blowing my mind when I was connecting with this frequency, because I was getting intel. And so this is where we're going to get a little heady. You know, I've been connecting a lot with the crown, and it's not like what they explain it to be in like ascension sort of materials, where they talk about how your crown chakra activates. And yes, there's that too. There's that thing that happens in the astral, etheric, plasma, all that stuff. That happens as well. But there's also a consciousness retrieval, and you just start being able to put more pieces together. More things make sense. There's less static. There's less wires that are crossed. And if there is something that's being crossed, you're able to see it or perceive it a lot more clearly. So 10 has always been very important to me. I've had a pretty strong 10th house, but it always led to a frequency related to like a destiny swap sort of thing. And a lot of this has to do with the warfare that sometimes happens with binary code in the law of polarity. I have had many clients, many folks who have reached out to me who have had a stacked 10th house. Y'all have had, you know, especially probably the folks who listen to me a lot, y'all probably have what I'm noticing is folks who connect with me a lot, y'all are big in 10, 11, and 12. You have a lot going on in your 10th house, your 11th house, and your 12th house. That's very common. This conversation is applicable because in all of those instances, in those last 3 houses on the astrological wheel, there are double numbers. This is showing mastery. You're getting to the end of the wheel here. So it's not just enough to hold one frequency. You will need to hold a dual current. In a law of polarity program, this is something to always be mindful of. When you're thinking about the law of polarity, as well as when you're thinking about the law of rhythm, 2 hermetic laws for you to look into. Look at the 7 hermetic laws as being like a part of the rules of the game board. Okay. And so when you're making certain decisions, keep them in the back of your head. Okay. When you're making large decisions, or if you are planning on something, let's say that you are making preparations to do something really large or to set a large scale goal, look at it within the concept of the 7 hermetic laws as well. Okay. And that'll let you know how you might need to grow, expand, evolve, or flow in order to set those wheels in motion. Because when we think about this being a hidden curriculum, that there's a hidden curriculum on this planet. So let me work something with y'all. Let me workshop something with y'all. Let's get into the realm of story. Let's not get so theoretical about things. Let's go into the realms of what if. Let's go into an alternate realm of story. What if there was a planet, and on this planet, beings were very ancient, but had been, for one reason or another, had their memory wiped. They forgot who they were. They only knew the moment in time that they were in at that particular moment. They only knew their name in that moment. They didn't even know if they believed in other lifetimes like that. They only knew the story that they were programmed with. And what if in this fictional planet, beings started waking up? There was something within the cosmic fabric of things, something within this story. You can add your own twist into this what if narrative. Something happened to the beings on this fictional planet, and they started to slowly gain consciousness and remembrance. Maybe they started to remember that there is an evolution that they're going through. There's a constant state of refinement that they're going through. And that the world that they exist in, or the universe that they exist in, is based upon a particular program. And depending upon what's going on with each, I'm getting unit of consciousness. Depending upon what's going on with each unit of consciousness, which we could say a person or a body, but depending on what was going on with each unit of consciousness would depend upon what experiences they would have. But what if it wasn't something like you make your life plan before you incarnate? Because a lot of times the New Age teachings, they'll say, okay, everyone made their life plan before they incarnated. And now you're living out your script. You agreed to it. It's kind of like, hey, you signed off on this. You got your house. You signed off. It's a 30-year lease. Now, come on. Okay. Or mortgage, whatever. So you work with it. So that's kind of how a lot of the spiritual teachings say is like, okay, if this is a reincarnation cycle, they'll tell us like, yeah, you sat down and made your whole birth plan. You made your whole plan. Of course, you don't remember any of it, so you're just going to take their word for it. But yeah, you made your whole birth plan. Everything's like set out for you. You did this. Yeah, you agreed to this. These are your soul contracts. But maybe they start remembering, maybe on this fictional planet, back to this fictional planet, maybe they start remembering that there was like a curriculum, actually. Maybe they start remembering that the planet can also, it's not just something that is stuck. The folks that were in this lack of remembrance, the state of lack of remembrance in this fictional novel that we're slightly world building right now, or galaxy building right now, they thought that they had to stick to their script. They thought there was no other way. But then they start opening up to another realm of remembrance of like, wow, I've been many things. I've been many states of consciousness. I've had many different experiences. Why don't I have more? Why am I in this stagnant script where I'm doing the same thing every single day? And I don't even know if I fully like it. Maybe I want to explore. So what if on this fictional planet that the way that consciousness was set up, or the technology was set up, was in such a way in which consciousness moved through technology, and that consciousness responded to the living beings immersing them. There was a constant conversation of consciousness because the embodied beings were consciousness and the technology were also consciousness. And so what if you could make a goal or have a dream and you set your intention. You say, I want to do this. I think a lot of people, it would behoove a lot of folks to consider the concept that if you set a goal or if you make an intention, that your environment responds immediately. Have you ever considered that? Have you ever considered that, just because you don't get the answer that you're seeking immediately, or just because it seems like you literally got the opposite of what it is you intended, what if the algorithm responds immediately to start arranging things for you to make that goal, for you to fulfill it? But what if the algorithm that you're in, the life track that you're on is so much in a different lane or density or let's just say direction? What if it's in a completely different direction in the path you think you should go? What about that? Especially when we're navigating a complex singularity algorithm, y'all. This is something that we're all navigating. There's a lot of people out there that want to forsake the singularity or basically say that this is a fallen timeline, that this is a negative thing. But this is a part of the binary code simulation that we will at some point need to master, or not need to, but it might behoove us to master so that we can explore other realms. One is a part of that. The singularity is a part of that. So in the singularity and the way that it works, what if you set an intention to do something or to make a change, and because it doesn't work the way manifestation gurus has told you that it works, or all those sorts of things, that you just automatically give up? But you could literally be being propelled pretty quickly into that direction that you would need to go in order to make that dream manifest. Now, what happens is you might get put on a certain life track, and you might be somebody, because of the way you're coded, you might have certain barriers that are programmed within you to not do that. You may have certain contracts from other beings who created the particular algorithm that you're on, because someone created it. Someone created the algorithm that you're on. It's a landlord sort of situation. So they created the blueprint, the infrastructure, the architecture of that algorithm. So just like any city planner, right? You notice how city planners, they have a very particular way that they want a city to go. They think about this, I did a lot of city planning studying. I ended up in a very architectural algorithm, kind of like we'll get into that a little bit more later. But I was able to be walked through how city planning works, the history of it, structuring civilizations. We're going to get into that in a little bit more depth when we get a little bit more text heavy later on. But if we take this as whoever created the structural blueprint of the algorithm that you're on may have put together some sort of bandwidths or some ways to make it so that you don't leave that algorithm. And I don't want to make this sound like a jailer. That's a little too on one side of the polarity. If we just make it like, oh, they're a jailer, they want to keep you from evolving, this and that. But you'll notice that certain places in the world struggle more when they don't have a population, right? You have certain places that literally maybe need a population control. But then you have other places where they're begging people to come. And you can feel it too. I don't know if you've ever been in a stale social group. Okay, there are sometimes a little bit more staler social groups out there. And it's because the people who are a part of that social group have stayed in their same environment for so long, right? They have the same routines. They know everything that everyone's doing. This is that small town dynamic. It's the dynamic of the town where no one ever leaves, but then no one ever comes, okay? Population dwindles with this. And what happens when a new person comes into town or comes into the group? They'll go crazy. They're like, oh my gosh, this new person. They'll, probably overwhelm them with questions, that kind of thing. It's that sort of energy. So if we think about this from a structural standpoint as it relates to the creation of algorithms, think of algorithms like cities or towns that were created, or nations even. You could go that big as well. And there was an architect who created this particular blueprint for this algorithm. And there's certain requirements. They designed it for a very particular type of avatar, let's just say, or not avatar. Yeah, let's say they designed it for a very specific type of being. They created very specific scripts. Okay, this is where we get into that Westworld concept. That's the most relatable sort of thing I can think of that talks about how this works, how this goes down. There wasn't just a Westworld. There was a Genghis Khan sort of world. There was a World War II sort of world. Okay, but they created the whole architecture of this. They created scripts for people. Some beings were awake in that, others were not, right? Some people were root users in that, others were not root users. Okay, so if we think about it like this, as a form of architectural design, you could think of it as a theme park, a city, a nation, what have you. The more people you have, you don't want to have too many people, but if you have a nice influx or flow of beings, it makes sure that things don't stay too stale. The energy doesn't get stale. Okay, because then that's when the abundance stops like flowing, at least for the being who created that algorithm. And the abundance is life force. So you need to have a certain amount of life force pumping within that particular algorithm to power up that builder's intentions. Because then what you can do is, if you're the architect of this realm, you can also have certain power spots that are going on in that algorithm, right? And you could design it in such a way that when certain beings are on this particular power spot, it generates energy for the person who, or the being who created the algorithm. Little fun things like that can be dreamt up of, okay, in this sort of concept. So if we think about it from a planning perspective, an architectural perspective, and especially if abundance, if folks were getting some kind of abundance or life force as it relates to this, they would maybe make it difficult for some beings to leave. Okay, especially if this was something, this is something that's been going on for a bit. Okay. They would make it so that maybe, like, let's go back to the Truman Show. Okay, that particular show, or not show, movie, where this man is slowly starting to wake up to the fact that his whole life has been filmed, he's been watched the whole time, that sort of thing. So Truman starts waking up. He starts waking up to what's going on. And he's like, I want to get out of here. I want my own life now. And if you notice in that movie, little inconveniences are made. They are architected because Truman can't leave. It's called the Truman Show. So little inconveniences are done. It seems almost like it's going to be impossible for Truman to leave, because the whole architecture of the town or the Truman Show makes it so that it appears that way. So when you're getting on another algorithm, you're deciding like, hey, I want to do this thing. You have a big grand dream. Well, are you even on the right algorithm? And your environment will actually start immediately responding to you if you have the eyes to see, to get you to where you want to go. Most people don't want to travel, though. You get to a certain point, you get to a certain boundary, like that's doing too much. I won't. And the way a lot of the binary code algorithm is set up is banking on that too. Oh yeah, they say they want this, but they're not gonna, when it gets to a certain point, they're not going to make the sacrifice. They're not going to make the jump or the leap. This particular self-limiting belief that they have is going to cripple them. They won't make it, and they'll stay here, just like they did on the Truman Show. So when you're thinking about quote unquote manifesting, so that was the explanation we got for how things materialize in what I'm going to call the 15-dimensional time matrix today. We're going to call it the 15-dimensional time matrix. We're going to utilize the lingo and the language of the ascension texts, specifically known as Keylontic Sciences and Ascension Glossary. They talk about a 15-dimensional time matrix. And these websites really want people to evolve within the 15-dimensional time matrix. They want folks to basically stay there. There are some realms that they discuss past that, but they make it seem as though there's nobody really there. They don't have any content or curriculum around how you get to those realms even. The highest, according to these ascension texts right now, is 15 dimensions, 15D. And you will be ascended. They call it the realm of the Rishi. That's also known as the sages, the wise ones. There's one issue, though. First of all, you're only completing half of the circle if you do that. That's step one. Because if we look at, let's take the astrological wheel. There are 29 degrees. Well, no, there's 30 degrees on the astrological wheel from 0 to 29. So right there, that's 30. To have a full circle experience in your incarnation or in your life track or in your experience, there would be 30 possibilities, 30 degrees. And yet these ascension texts usually talk, especially if we look at Keylonic Sciences, they keep it around 15 dimensions. And ascension starts, well, I mean, if we look at Ascension Glossary, ascension starts at, they say 5D, okay? They usually want to keep people in the 12 dimensions with this, though. They talk about the 12th dimension being extremely advanced. And then there's even some more advanced places that you can go past dimension 12. And then you can connect with the consciousness of dragons, maybe at dimensions 22 or 24. But you didn't even complete the whole wheel. You didn't even complete the whole wheel. And the 15th card in the tarot, in the major arcana, is the devil. So computationally, because here's the thing, you can find a lot of tarot in the computational algorithm of this particular game board. And for this, let's specifically look at the Kabbalistic tree of life and the Kabbalistic tree of death. Let's say that that is a game board. Let's say that that could be 30 degrees. But the Ascension texts want you to focus more so on the 15 dimensions. If you're lucky, they really just want you to get to 5. Get to the 5 if you can, and that's that. You're good. But if you look at this from a wheel, if we're looking at this from a wheel, whether it's the astrological wheel, whether it's the wheel of samsara, it's just a little sliver on the wheel. What they really want to do is they want to have a VIP section on this particular game board. So if your intention is to ascend, this is something to keep in mind. You might be looking to get into a VIP algorithm. That might be something that you'll be navigating. A place where there's a lot of neighborhood watch. A place where there maybe is a lot of profiling, these kinds of things. That's what you are intending to do. So then be prepared for that. Well, why would you want to do this? Like, why would you, if it's so exclusive, if it's not even full circle, like, why even play along? Well, in order to access other realms, having the potential to access other realms, you will need to embrace the law of one. You will need to embrace one God, one. Yes, it's written in the code. It's written in the code. For mastery and to transcend the tree of life, tree of death architecture in a way that where you're able to explore and then also create your own, because there's also a pathway, y'all, to create your own algorithm. Have you thought of that? What that would mean? And I don't mean, we think about this, you might be like, well, yeah, you can create your own app. Okay, you can create your own website. But what if you could do that for your life, the way you experience your reality? What if there is a hidden curriculum out there for certain beings to be able to create their own algorithms, their own game boards? That would require a certain level of mastery. Double-digit mastery. You're in the double digits now. You're in the crown. You're not in single digits anymore. You're in the crown. So I was feeling really bogged down by binary code. 10 has always been a really important number to me. I was getting information from the Ascension materials that apparently the 10th dimensional Stargate is a fallen architecture with a lot of warfare, with a lot of polarity, with a lot of negative. It's always talking about negative, dark energy in the 10th dimension. And yet, you need the 1 and you need the 0. So if you're not able to master that tension or master that polarity, then it will be difficult for you to hold the frequency of mastery. And And then you'll be on the same, if you're cool with being on the game board that you're on and then not being able to like fully create your own space within it, okay, or having to co-sign, have other beings co-sign on you in order to, or validate you in order for you to do the things that you want to do. If you want to bring things from outside of the 15-dimensional time matrix, mastering the 1 and the 0 is a must. So I kept talking about where I want to make the correction is I kept talking about how binary code is basic. And I was seeing, there was a part of me that was like, you need to transcend this binary code. You'll want to transcend this tree of life, tree of death architecture, all that kind of stuff. Okay, you'll want to, and there are ways to do it. There are realms to do it in. And at the same time, as you can see, there are also interferences that happen, So I was solving that problem a lot as well. And when I say problem, not so much in a negative, but more of like even like a word problem or like a statistical sort of thing. So then I was writing off binary code. I was like, I know I'm supposed to transcend this. So I'm going to start working on transcending it now. Okay. But I wasn't privy to what the actual hidden curriculum is around binary code and what it means. So I'm going to be sharing that in a little bit so that I can offer this up for anybody who is interested in exploring this concept of mastery, specifically mastering the 10 or the double digits. If your birth chart is heavy with the double digits, you'll want to look at your connection with mastery and with being able to hold polarity as well. But very specifically, if you are with the frequencies of 10. So here's the thing. We have in the Ascension text, we have the law of one. You need to embrace one. In the Abrahamic religions, you have a similar thing. You need to embrace one God. It's less about who that God is, and it's more about the computation of one. So it could be Muhammad, it could be Jesus, it could be Archangel Michael, whatever. The idea is that you embrace one, the digit one. You must master one and what one means. And master the 0. You must master the 0 and all of what that means. So if we were to look this from the yin and the yang, or the concept known as Taijitu, which is a concept in Taoism, which is more about the cosmic fabric of things, the oneness of things. One would represent your yang energy. 0 would represent your yin energy, or 1 might represent the solar. 0 might represent the lunar, or 1 might represent the masculine. 0 might represent the feminine. Okay, so the 1 is what you need to master, but you also need to master the 0. What's going on right now in the 15-dimensional time matrix is they have a curriculum based on 1. Only half of the wheel. It's a half circle. They only want you to go up to the 15th dimension, which is also the devil card. They want you to ascend to the devil. That's what they want you to do. So peep this. This is where we got to look at things not as seriously. Start looking at any religious text as like a trickster, crossroads entity writing to you. You'll get a lot more subtext that way. So these ascension texts, they say, is actually kind of funny when you think about it in this trickstery kind of way. They're getting a lot of laughs. I'll say that. So you have these ascension texts that want you to ascend into the light, ascend into the Christos, the one God, the one shining God, right? And then the highest you can get is 15, which is the realm of the devil. It's kind of funny when you think about it. But they're going to tell you, I mean, if you don't know about how the numbers and stuff works and how the computations of things work, and I didn't either. I believed this stuff at one point in time. And it wasn't until I was able to go into the back end of things and was able to access layers of my consciousness that could even understand how this stuff works. I'm still learning. I'm a student. But, you could see how that might be leading you into like a tunnel of false hope. Okay. Because even for the beings who get into the VIP of ascension, and what do I mean when I say the VIP of ascension? You're able to activate your pineal gland, your thalamus, your crown, all that kind of stuff. And there is a Christic anointing. There is a way that you can interpret the Bible through a process of anointing to turn all that stuff on. If you can read through the spiritual jargon and you can get to the subtext, there is a whole other book that you will read in the Bible. And yeah, I'll say it is very, very seductive. The light, the anointing, I gotta say, I've said in other lives before how I've taught, because I've had a lot of folks, a lot of Christian frequencies, but they were coming into my algorithm to tell me like, hey, you really need to do this Christ thing. You really need to become the priesthood and get into all this stuff because there's stuff there for what you need. This is what I mean. Our algorithms are responding to us immediately. It's just, can we perceive the subtext? Can we perceive the hidden curriculum of what's actually going on? It took me a while. It took me actually stumbling, falling, doing things incorrectly many times, okay, going against struggle until I was able to activate enough of my consciousness to start reading the subtext. But the reason why I was struggling was because I couldn't understand what was fully going on. So all that to say, if I had understood the subtext of things earlier on, I could have seen or perceived like, okay, so I need to, there's energies in the Bible that I can connect with very specifically for what my goals are. Okay. But I wasn't thinking of it that way. But let's just say, back to this world building concept that we're doing, this fictional planet, the beings on this fictional planet are beginning to wake up. They are realizing that they are more than just the one incarnation. They are realizing that there's just more than one way to do things. And then they start wanting to explore. Well, in that particular energy, there would be some, if we think about the engineers of that particular place, maybe they don't want people to wake up. Maybe they're benefiting from people staying in sleep state. Or maybe it's a school. Maybe they're in some kind of a school. But you would at some point need to start waking up to the subtext. This group of beings, they would maybe need to start seeing things beneath the surface. There's a book out there. It's called Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents by Octavia Butler. And she talks about this concept in this book. It's a dystopian novel about a pretty strongly religious timeline of indoctrination. Okay, and she basically discusses how in this book there is a group of beings that want to, they're kind of like light workers or star seeds. They call themselves Earth Seed. They want to grow a community based upon God being the concept of change. And they want to they basically focus on the stars. They want to take root in the stars. So they get targeted by these Christos algorithms. Okay, this was in a timeline of extreme religious indoctrination. And they target them and they bring them into this re-education camp. So it's a pretty gnarly situation. But she has a lot of subtext in that book. One of those things is, this takes place in, I believe, 2034. Okay, so not too far off from where we're at now. But she talks about this video game concept known as dream masks. She talks about dream masks, where basically beings put on this dream mask or VR headset, I guess you would say, and they're in another world. They're in a completely simulated environment. And some of the beings in this book who are wearing these dream masks, they get addicted to them. They don't want to take them off. They don't want to be a part of their real world. They want to be a part of this fictional world. And maybe she was kind of speaking to something else, okay, with that. Maybe because there is this energy of certain people are in certain algorithms. There's a hidden curriculum that folks are being put in, and it's up to you to perceive it. And if you wanted to not be in that hidden curriculum, right? Like if you started waking up to this and you're like, you know what? I kind of want to do my own thing. I know I'm doing this right now, but I actually want to do something else. But you doing that something else would throw off the balance of that architect's creation of the world that they built. You might run into some problems. And if you're on a path of mastery, if you have a lot of 10s going on in your chart, just look for 10s, 1 and the 0. If you are on a path of mastery in that particular way, well, then you would probably not want to stay in someone else's design for your life. You might want to design your own. But that's an initiated form of information in which you would need to go through the portal of 9 to receive. 9 is the number of initiation. It is the number of long distance travel. It is ruled by Jupiter. You would need to go through the portal of 9 to make significant changes to your algorithm. Initiate. Read the subtext so that you could have the literacy that you would need in order to navigate this singularity consciousness. It is the one that's a part of this code. So if you wanted to transcend it, you would master the 1 and the 0. You would master the binary code. So I already have plans outside of it. I already have plans outside of the binary code, okay? I have my sights on other things. But I was getting too cocky. Okay, now I'm in my humility stage. Okay, kingdom mindset. I'm being a little bit more humble now. And, I'm at that 10 commandments vibe, y'all. There's a 10 commandments sort of thing, okay? And you get to this point where you want to cross a threshold and you get to the frequency of 10, and that's the energy of the crown and the throne room. And you have some decisions to make. They go in depth in the Bible, and they talk about what the things that you'll need to encounter. And let me just say this, y'all, and some people might hear me say the Bible or the throne room and just immediately just want to disconnect. And I get it. I totally get it. But I am coming at this as somebody who has been navigating this simulated energy for a while. And I've been coming into consciousness in different stages to the point where I was able to discern what the hidden curriculum was. And so I was intuitively doing certain things to expand my consciousness or to navigate, to advance, around this game board to transcend it. Okay. But it wasn't until recently this year when I made that intention to become the priesthood and I started really working with the frequencies of Marduk to do that. It wasn't until this year that I started to see that, y'all, the curriculum is biblical, but it's not just biblical. I'm going to give you an example. Okay, so this is, I'm not going to go into a full Bible study with it. You can research this on your own. But the first book I wrote was called The Grind Culture Detox. It was about healing from overwork, toxic productivity, and what I was referring to as grind culture. That grunt, that 9 to 5 hustle. I was knowing that my consciousness was expanding and I wanted to get out of that grind culture mentality. What I didn't, and so I went through that journey and all of that. And that journey led me into a spiritual awakening. That journey led me into a sabbatical. That journey led me into a quest, et cetera, et cetera. I looked at the book of Job the other day, Job 38, book of Job 38 through 42. And I was able to have the eyes to see and perceive. And this has a lot to do with the serpentine initiation you need to go through. Okay? But the Bible shows you how to do that. It does. I looked at the book of Job 38 to 42. I said, oh my goodness, this is what I've been working on for at least a good 2 years. Everything that conversation between God and Job was having. There's a hidden curriculum, but whose consciousness is it being sourced from? These are questions we'll need to ask. Now, the meaning we make of it is really up to us. We could think of it as a nefarious plot of like religious zealots who want to brainwash a whole collective to think a very particular way. So they created a whole intricate AI algorithm to embed their particular biblical stories into it. Meanwhile, saying that there's a separation of church and state in the verbally. But in this fictional world, maybe all of the Bible stories are embedded into your algorithm. Maybe. And a lot of this, y'all, depends upon location. The stage changes depending upon when you move location. All the world's a stage. So it depends upon who's the director of that stage. There are different ones, and there is a hidden curriculum for going through that as well. There is. So you could have a doom and gloom script. Okay, that's one way to go about it. But that won't be as fun. Okay, that won't be as fun. And, you're in the script. You got to figure it out, You either just are going to keep getting respawned and respawned in the game, or you're going to start interacting with your environment and saying, hey, I want to evolve. I'm not liking what I'm seeing around me. Help me evolve. And then you might start playing your reality like a game. And hey, maybe this is a part of maybe this is a part of it. Maybe a part of it is you evolving outside of a need to even have a curriculum, a hidden curriculum. You wake up to, oh, there is a hidden curriculum. Oh, but I want to create my own. It's the same thing that a lot of people did when the pandemic happened and more people decided that they wanted to work from home. Then a lot of people decided that they wanted to travel. They wanted to take sabbaticals. They wanted to do other things outside of just living the 9 to 5 dream. And at the same time, people had to learn new skills in order to do that. They needed to learn how to create their own businesses, how to do craftsmanship. It's all, but a lot of it, y'all, is in the book of Job. If you're struggling with work-life balance and stuff like that, or if you're in this energy of, I don't want to work anymore, I don't want to have a job anymore, Job, Job. You don't want to have a Job anymore. You don't want to be Job, because Job, the whole thing with the book of Job that I'm referring in the section I'm referring to is he's pissed off because he keeps suffering. He keeps suffering. Bad things keep happening to him. And he's just like, why is God forsaken me? Like, why me? I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want life to be a struggle anymore. And God rose up on him and was like, oh, you don't want to struggle anymore? Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? Can you do that? Do you know this? Do you know that? Whole list of instructions, y'all. If you need to liberate your work life, Job 38 through 42, major key alert. Major key alert. Some of y'all are going to read that and be like, that's not real. How are you going to do that? Hey, look, then you're not on the game maker algorithm, and that's okay. That's all right. But for folks who are, a lot of people who want to stop with like working jobs, you're on a game maker algorithm. What you're really saying is, I want to create my own narrative. I want to decide how my life unfolds. I don't want to clock in anymore. I don't want to report to anyone anymore. You are in a more of an architectural algorithm then, a craftsman. You are in the algorithm of a craftsperson. That's not something everybody is able to do. Okay? Or, what happens with a lot of folks is people, they'll start it, but then they'll become a lot of blockages, which happens a lot. They call it destiny swapping, that sort of thing. People want to do it. They have this dream, but it's like it's not in the algorithm for them to keep it. That's an issue related to 1 and 0. You don't have your 1 and 0. And you're in a field where other people have their 1 and 0 and you don't. What happens when you wake up and you want to expand your life chances, but you don't have the coding already embedded into you? Your sim profile doesn't even have that coding. You would need to go through a very deep re-education process. Okay, also unscripting process. And then you would need to upload what it is that you needed, and then also know how to get what you needed. Meanwhile, you have other people that you're comparing yourself to that maybe are thriving in the field that you want to thrive in, but they already have the codes. They already have the codes. They already had the serpentine activate. They already had that. They already had this Masonic stuff going on. They were in that family, all that. They already had that. So the path is going to be more easeful. Okay. So you would be on an interesting sort of realm of mastery, and you would want to master whatever you're in, figure out how it works, and then master it, and then go on to other pastures. But to do that, you master binary code. You master the one God, and all of what that means, and you master the 0. This is why you have ascension text telling you that the 10 sphere tree of life grid is a fallen grid. It's not the real one. They want you to look at the 12 tree. They want you to look at the 12 sphere grid. But that's 1 and 2. That's different. That's a different frequency of a double digit. It ends up being 3. Okay, so 1, 2, the 12 equals 3, which is a power number for sure. But what's happening with these ascension texts is they want to skip 0. They never talk about it. They don't want to talk about 0. They start at 1 always. But there is a 0 dimension. There's a dimension 0 that is extremely abundant. It's extremely abundant. And some beings know that it's abundant. They just don't want to talk about it like that, because that's going into the other world, as they call it, or the other half of the circle, the other half of the wheel. To get to the other half of the wheel, you master 1 and 0. Or look at this as being the Kabbalistic tree of life, the Kabbalistic tree of death. A lot of people are not going to like hearing that. You don't want to do all that. I get it. It just depends on like, well, where do you want to go though? Like, what do you want to do? And what if there is a hidden curriculum and you keep getting turned away at the gates? You keep getting gate kept because you don't have the coding. Like you don't, and it's not about your education even. It's about your access to a computational algorithm. And you can navigate and learn and grow, but a lot of times you'll need access, and sometimes you'll need to cross certain dimensional thresholds. So the reason why the Bible is because it's the cross. Literally, they're telling you with the Holy Bible, they have the cross on it, do they not? They're telling you it's a crossroads book. It's a book about the crossroads. Start looking at the Bible as a crossroads intelligence who wrote it. And when you fold up the cross, it becomes a cube. So it's also giving you a code with that, and the cube is what represents that matter realm. It's also giving you a code that sometimes to have that kingdom mindset, you go through the cross. So, there's the one and then there's the zero. The issue with the one is that the texts, which are ascension texts, whether you're looking at the Bible, whether you're looking at, different websites that talk about ascension and the chakras, they want you to always look towards the light. But the thing about it is the light is only half of the or half of the curriculum on the tree of life, tree of death architecture. It's only half. So it's going to keep you in your little VIP section in that particular architecture, or maybe it's a sub realm of the tree, because that's another thing. It's like the way I feel like it's too limiting, even if I say tree of life, tree of death, because there are other realms. And when I say tree of life, tree of death, I mentioned Kabbalah earlier, but it's in all different kinds of cultures, y'all. There's a Kemetic tree of life. There's a Norse tree of life. Okay, there's the Kabbalistic tree. There's different ones, but it's a similar architect. It's like based on a similar architecture. And you're always going to have the lower realms too. You're always going to have the underworld. You have to. In the law of polarity, the underworld upholds the actual, like the tree that they talk about more. So there is no tree of life unless there's a tree of death. So actually the tree of death is way older than the tree of life, because the tree of life built itself on top of the tree of death. Okay. And because of the law of polarity, they uphold each other. Same thing with Marduk and Tiamat. Marduk slayed Tiamat and built his kingdom on her body. Lilith is at the base of the tree of life. She's, represents Malkuth, which is the kingdom, but she's also the gateway into the tree of death. So depending upon the side of the polarity that you're on, you have a very different experience related to what Lilith is. So at some point, if you're wanting to create your kingdom, which is really just this concept of you building your own tree. Cross is another word for tree. You growing your own tree. You would need to have the fertile soil and really focus on what your root system is, what you're growing. You would definitely need a water source. You would need to have access to your inner waters to do that. You would also need to have access to a very deep underworld, inner earth sort of frequency to build your kingdom on this earthly plane as well. And you would need to master the 10. They're telling you that in the Kabbalistic tree of life. 10 is Malkuth. That is the base of the tree. That is Lilith. That is the body. You know, you could also say that's like the body of Christ. Okay. On one side, the body of Christ is the sacrifice. So somebody's building their Malkuth or their kingdom on your body. But in another polarity, you are doing the same. It's the upside down. This is what the upside down means. This is the frequency of 10. This is why 1 is very, very afraid of 0. Because there is a moment in which there can be a crossing. This is like a crossroads sort of scenario. And this is where the destiny swaps can come in. 1 and 0 get together in a binary coded system where dark fights the light. What does this mean? 1 and 0 get together and then they duke it out. And there can only be 1. Okay. So that's a frequency, and that's what's kind of going on if we look at this numerically. That, like, if we were to look at our situation as coding, a lot of times it's an issue of there's more 1s than there are 0s, and there's an out of balance with it. There's like almost like a domination, colonization frequency of 1, but it's not being balanced with 0. Another issue is with binary code, it's not just 1 0 1 0 1 0. It's a lot of times it's 0 1. And 0 is always implied. So if I were to write down 0 and 1, you would read 1, but you would see 0. Some people would read 0 1, but it always ends up being 1, which means that 0 is off. It can have the potential to be off the charts and undetectable and unmeasured. Okay, so that's another reason why 1, from a coding standpoint, 1 gets threatened by 0. So for folks who are on a state of mastery, you want to build your own potentialities. You're interested in that. You're interested in exploring other realms and what that would mean. You're interested in bringing things into the 15-dimensional time matrix from realms outside of time. If this is something you're curious about, well, you want to master 1 and 0 so that you can do that, and then you're not getting like spiritually attacked, or you're actually feeling like this is something that is benefiting you, okay, and that's growing you. So you would master 1 and 0 to transcend spiritual attacks, okay, or feeling attacked. You would need to hold the frequency of the male and the feminine. You would need to hold, or the masculine and the feminine, the yin and the yang, the dark and the light simultaneously. And so that they don't fight, so that 1 and 0 don't fight, you would hold a state of neutrality. You wouldn't prioritize one over the other. So we demonstrated this in the last session on Black Diamond. I just did a session on the mysteries of the Black Sun. And in the mysteries of the Black Sun, we did a demo session, okay? One of the algorithms I'm in right now, y'all, is like a master builder algorithm. The best way I can describe it came to me the other day. It's like the Da Vinci Code. Like I'm in a weird Da Vinci Code or ninth gate algorithm. And it's like, it made so much sense to me. I never like perceived it from a movie, but I was like, oh my gosh, that's actually really true. And there were some times in certain moments of my journey where I would watch those films and it's like, oh yeah. But there's this energy of like, this algorithm that I'm on with this like master builder. I'll say that if we were to look at this like traditionally, this would be like a Caucasian male's algorithm between the ages of say 45 and 60, who's like a, postdoc, went to some fancy school, and is so independently wealthy that they're just able to go on quests. Okay. Indiana Jones sort of thing. All right. So I have not fully mastered 1 and 0. 1 was hard for me. I was feeling too colonized by 1. If we looked at this from an algorithmic standpoint, a binary algorithm. And there are parts of this simulations game board where there's a domination of 1. This is where we get into the singularity. One, one, one. There can only be one. There can only be one. One, 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 one. Don't look at zero. And zero's scary. Don't look at it. So there's an aspect that's been going on with that. And so if you get caught up in that, and then you also, maybe you lean more towards zero. For beings who are looking to transcend certain prescripted curriculums in their life, the way their life should go, what they should do, well, then you would want to be in more of a builder frequency, most likely. Okay, but if you are feeling like you're being taken over by this frequency of one, that could make you resistant to it. If everyone's talking about one this, one that, and there's a lot of contrarians out there, and I've been one of them, and I still am in many ways, but there's a lot of contrarians out there that are really big independent thinkers, and they're going to hear the hive mind telling them what they should do, and they're going to look the other way. But the hidden curriculum is banking on you doing that too. You just want to start working on perceiving your environment in a different way, perceiving the curriculum in a different way, and see where you can be a creator. How can you create with the algorithm? Because if you have eyes to see, if you have the perception to see what's going on and how your life is being very orchestrated, y'all. I mean, the details are pretty extensive. They're pretty extensive. The feedback happens pretty quickly as well, if you have the eyes to perceive. But there's been this issue with me. I've been on this Da Vinci Code algorithm, and the whole, and it's because I had certain goals. I said, hey, I want to do these things. And so they were like, the algorithm was like, I'm going to say it's like more of a spidery consciousness. It's like, okay, well, you need to initiate. So I started getting put into these very interesting situations of being in these like old boys club settings. I did a download, all for entertainment purposes only, not saying this is real nor not real, but I did a download on genetic path cutter on Patreon about my times staying at Bohemian Grove. Neither real nor not real. And the book that I wrote on hyperdimensional warfare was written in a Masonic lodge. Weird things, like very much being an aberration in the algorithm. If we're really talking about these places where beings of my particular sim profile were not even invited or allowed to be there. But I got in the master builder algorithm. I set the intention. And I did some other things. I did some stuff. I'm not going to talk about it here, but I worked. I worked with the algorithm. I created a way. Where there was very much trying to be no way. Okay. But I was able to connect with the weaving consciousness of the algorithm to make it happen. But yeah, you would just need to be able to hold the frequency of that. So for me, I was not, there would be too much warfare going on sometimes when I was in those like Da Vinci Code algorithms. Okay. Whereas like I felt like sometimes the flow wasn't there. And it was because there were certain initiated secrets that I did not have access to. I wasn't privy to. And a lot of that had to do with the biblical texts. Okay. So there is an energy of mastering 1 and 0, mastering binary code to hold this master builder frequency. So I was being a little bit too flippant about binary code before, because there is some energy of the 1. I wanted to prioritize the 0 more because I'm more naturally connected with the 0. But for me, like being in an algorithm of mastery, well, then I need to meet 1 and 0. If it's a binary code, I need to hold the frequency of 1 and 0 and do so from a state of neutrality. This is why the Bible, this is why Marduk, this is why these things, this is a very solar masculine energy. Now, the issue though is that the way things have been set up is it has not been set up based upon a full circle, full let's just say like a full circle experience on this planet. It's been more of a half circle. It's been more of the frequencies of the half circle. So this is the mysteries of the of the squaring the circle. So one of the energies that's been coming to me a lot through my experience is Ta, Ptah, who is who was a polymath, or who was not a polymath. He was a deity, master builder deities, the deity of craftsmen. He's the builder deity. One of the places I ended up exploring and studying and learning was the Saqqara complex in the Egypt that they refer to in North Africa. And that particular temple was dedicated to Ta. So I had a chance to go there, commune with that area. I've always been really interested in Imhotep, very connected with Imhotep. And I set the intention to embody the frequencies of an Imhotep, okay? And learn, like really work with the algorithm of a polymath I knew I needed to grow in consciousness. I knew that there was some limitations that I was experiencing. So I worked a lot with the consciousnesses of polymaths to support me with my learning journey. So a lot of that temple in Saqqara is dedicated to Ta. But it was weird because whenever I would do readings on Ta or Ptah, we'll say Ptah. I don't pronounce the P, but we'll say Ptah. When I would do readings on my connection with him, it was always kind of more negative. It was always like, it always seemed very karmic, like lots of soul contracts and stuff like that. But I kept getting pushed in that direction. And it was because of this energy of the master builder and mastering the 10. So there is a binary code to navigate, y'all. Okay. There is a 1 and a 0 to master. 1 is the yang frequency, the masculine frequency, and then 0 is the feminine principle. The feminine principle looks scary, especially when 1 merges with it, because it creates an opportunity for newness, for creation. It's the fertile ground, it's the fertile soil for new creations to emerge. So in a consciousness that wants to only focus on the light, the 0 feels dangerous. The 0 feels scary. And this is something that we were exploring in the last session on Patreon. There is an energy of, if you want to transcend the 15-dimensional time matrix, you would build a condition for you to do that. Okay, so I was workshopping that in Patreon, and I was really focusing on connecting with the 1, which is the light, which is the Christ. And I was seeing a lot of very beneficial progress with that. But as I tried to cross that dimensional threshold, and it was happening real time online, as I was trying to cross that dimensional threshold, I wasn't honoring the 0 enough. So I was talking about darkness and light, and we were centering it around the concept of Taijitsu, which is a Taoist concept, which you can find in the yin yang symbol as well. And we were also just talking about this concept of the black sun, and this concept of there's a black sun and there's a white sun. And depending upon what algorithm you're in will depend upon where you're connecting a lot of times. And there was some interference because I was talking about the light and Christ, and Christ is the crossroads. Christ is going to support you with getting out of that 15-dimensional time matrix. but it's only half of the equation. That's just the 1. There's also the 0. The 0 can represent the darkness. It can represent the feminine. It can represent lunar energies, but it can also represent the Antichrist. Okay, so this, when the crossing of the threshold was happening, there was an Antichrist frequency that was coming through as well. And that's because 15, or the 15th dimension, okay, when you leave that time matrix, or you're leaving the rings of Saturn as well, Saturn means Satan. When you leave that 15-dimensional time matrix, you're going through the portal of the devil or the Antichrist. This is what they're not saying in the Ascension text. So if you focus only on ascending, you are going to be ascending to an upper room that was created within that same algorithm. And if you're cool with that, some people are. I've checked out some of those realms. They're very seductive. They're very fun. They're very great. So if that's you and you're cool with that, some people are. Some people already like the setup, But if you're looking for something more expansive, then you would also hold the frequency of the dark and the light simultaneously in order to do that. That's mastering 1 and 0. There are beings on this planet who know this, and they have the keys to the kingdom. They have the keys to Malkuth because of this. But if you are in a particular algorithm where they're only focusing on ascension, when they're only focusing on the light, they're only giving you half of the curriculum to leave the 15-dimensional time matrix. Because there's 1 and then there's 0. There's dark and then there's light. There's Christ and then there's Antichrist. And if you try to speak about these things without in choosing one over the other, there's going to be interference and you're going to have blockages. But if you can hold that frequency of neutrality, if you can hold that frequency of the dark and the light, that's how you master the 10th dimension. But you want to make sure you're not prioritizing one over the other. And I've seen this in a few sort of experiences I've had in the frequency of 10. It can turn into warfare very quickly, very, very quickly. But this is your crown node. This is when you start getting into the double digits. There's even they have this in the Egyptian pantheon as it relates to wearing the double crown as well. But you would this would be you embodying the 1 and the 0. And the 0, though, to beings who are focused only on the 1 looks scary. Or at least they want you to think it looks scary. But if you look a little bit deeper, it's just the other side of the circle. And there are certain beings who, let's just say they have a light body and they also have a shadow body. They have a light body template and they also have a dark matter template. And them being able to simultaneously hold the dark and the light makes it so that they have more of abundance of opportunities. Can you imagine if it's the equivalent of somebody having half of the space to create? If you're just in one side of the paradigm, that one side of the circle, you will only experience that half side. But if you were to be able to have the credentials to go in between two sides of the whole, couldn't you see how that would make your life a lot more expansive? So this is the dynamics that we have. This is the algorithmic discrepancy that we have. And we're getting misinformation as it relates to this because there's some beings that want to keep it this way. Because the secret, something I've been learning through the energies of the Temple of Ptah, some of the secrets related to squaring the circle is the fact that they didn't square the circle, they squared the half circle. That's how they were able to solve the algorithm of, can you do the impossible? Can you square the circle? Well, they didn't square the full circle, they squared the half circle. That's kind of how they did it. So a lot of beings are in a more of a half circle experience. And a lot of us are transcending the 15-dimensional time matrix. Sometimes, though, the question is how strongly can we hold the frequency? So I know I've transcended the 15-dimensional time matrix many, many times. And how do you strengthen your bandwidth and your capacity to do that unencumbered? And you know that that's unencumbered just by, the way your algorithm is responding to you. More spaciousness, more flow, more joy. And then also, how do we support with bringing things outside from the outside of the 15-dimensional time matrix into it? It's like bringing in fresh energy, fresh ideas. It helps with the activation and sparking of consciousness. It grows fertility. It grows abundance. So a lot of us are meant to travel back and forth, through the boundaries of time to bring other new things, new fresh ideas into the mix. This is how we evolve as a group, as a species. This goes back to Ubuntu. So with that, I want to talk a little bit more about the monad. We're going to get into some of the 88 stellar access keys. So the issue with the monad is that in the Ascension text, they're talking about it as a singular, the one. But really, the monad is the 1 and the 0. That's the complete set in a binary code program. But there are a lot of Ascension texts out there that only want to talk about the monad as being one, single. But we want to start thinking about it as 1 and 0. And you can even put the 0 in front of the 1 as well if you wanted to. You could do that. So if you, because one of the hidden curriculum, the aspects of the hidden curriculum for mastery is going to be 1. You mastering the 1 and all of what that means. That's a strong leadership, yang frequency. So you're going to need to master the 1. But a lot of y'all might feel stifled by the 1, but also just remember that that 0 also can come before 1 too. So Ubuntu, I feel, means more about 0 and 1. Okay, the law of 1 or the singularity focuses more on 1. But we just really want to focus on the unity of both the 0 and the 1, the unity of both the darkness and the light, the unity of both the masculine and the feminine, or the yin and the yang. Okay, this is what will be required as you transcend the 15-dimensional time matrix, which is basically going beyond the rings of Saturn. Some people won't want to do that, but for folks who do, that will be the energy of mastering the binary code of the simulation. And for a lot of folks, you already know 0. You know 0. You were incarnated knowing 0. But the 1 is what you will need to embody. That's going to be monadic integration. So let's read a little bit more about it. So it says, this is from my book, The 88 Stellar Access Keys. So you can see that in my library. I have some links below. It's a Technomancer's Guide to Star Walking. So the monad refers to the unified state of consciousness that exists prior to division into opposites. It is awareness in its coherent whole form before it becomes split into light and shadow, masculine and feminine, logic and intuition, or any other polarity. Within the simulation's architecture, fragmentation is what creates limitation. When consciousness is divided, it moves in loops between extremes, repeating patterns, and narrow pathways. So yeah, this is this idea of creating new routes of consciousness, y'all. Imagine that there's just all of this space to create roads, pathways, but you're not even aware of it. You can't even see it in your particular dimensional frequency bandwidth. Okay, but monadic integration would open up those potentialities for you. Monadic integration is the return to this unified operating state within the body and awareness. Rather than eliminating polarity, it gathers all aspects of experience back into coherence. From this centered field, perception expands beyond linear cause and effect into multidimensional awareness, where new pathways, intersections, and possibilities become visible. This unified state is what allows polar harmonics to function. When consciousness is integrated, opposing forces no longer clash or pull against each other. They flow together as complementary currents, creating power, creativity, and expanded movement across reality. Monadic integration is therefore the grounding point of sovereignty. And this is like this is the current of true love, y'all. This is the current of true love. And I love the numbers I'm seeing, 010. That's it. That is so it. This is the current of true love, 10. In a binary algorithm, 1 0 or 0 1, two numbers together. The closest we get to this in our numerical system would be 10 or 0 1, which is so interesting how I'm seeing both of those on the screen also with the numbers. Wow. So the frequency of true love is 10. It's the unification of binary code, 0 1. So you don't transcend because your heart, the electromagnetic field of your heart, is a builder. It's the frequency of true love. Remember that Christ represents true love in the heart, right? They're always talking about Christ consciousness. But if we decode this a little bit more, Jesus was a carpenter. Jesus was a builder. So this Christ consciousness, this frequency of love, this true love, which he needed to get to through the cross, okay? He showed that true love even through the cross and the cross sort of scenario. But what they're telling you, if you decode this a little bit more, is that you would get to the energy of true love by crossing. Now, if you stay on one half of the binary code algorithm, which is what has happened a lot of times, there have been certain beings, particularly the ones that have been marked as 0, okay, who wear the coding of 0 in the simulation, which is more of the dark, feminine, yin, lunar energy. Some of y'all have been bound to this particular binary coded algorithm by the frequency of 1, let's just say, so that basically those beings could stay at neutral and have more of a full circle experience, and then you stay bound to one side in order for that to happen. This is the rationale behind certain temple priestesses, whether we're talking about Vestal virgins or the priestesses of Vesta, or whether we're talking about the Melissae bees, the bee priestesses, the Melissae from Rome. When you're getting into those energies where there have been temple priestesses that are supposed to remain virgins and supposed to dedicate themselves to the priesthood, algorithmically, that would happen through a binding, like some kind of a binding algorithm. So there are some beings who have been caught up in that as well, who will really want to get interested in this concept of 0 and 1 and mastering the 1 and the 0 so that they can move more freely within their experience. That's the best way I can describe it, y'all. That was me getting schooled on binary code because I was being too flippant about binary code. But what I was really seeing and trying to express was that this half circle concept. These builder frequencies, the beings who come out of the temple of Ta, okay, the sons of Ta or Ptah, And I rocks with Ptah. Okay, I learned a lot of this through this energy. But what they've done to square the circle is they have squared the half circle. Okay, that's the riddle of it. Because, and you know this because if you look at Ptah's hieroglyphics, he has two of the symbols he has for his hieroglyphic is one is the half circle and one is the square. He has some other ones, but he doesn't have a circle. He only has the half. That's a code. He only has the half circle. So the way they were able to do this mysterious feat of squaring the circle is they squared the half circle. But for beings who want to have a full circle experience, you're in a square. You see? You see how that works? So if you wanted to have a full spectrum experience or an experience of mastery, you would need to figure out how to get to the other half of the circle, which means you would have to get out of the boundaries of the square, which means initiation. You need to learn what the beings, like whoever created what you're in, you learn their curriculum. And there are pathways and avenues for you to do that. If you set your intention to it, and if you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear and the inner perception. So they squared the circle by making it a half circle so that the beings in that half circle would not be able to evolve. Meanwhile, the beings who squared the circle are able to move and have a full spectrum, full circle experience in its entirety. And they wear both the dark and the light to do that. They have a light body and they also have a dark matter template as well. You need both to have a full circle experience, a full spectrum experience. But they're teaching only ascension. They're teaching only the light to the half circle that they are squaring so that they stay in the square. This was how binary code was presented to me and why it's important to master binary code instead of trying to just transcend it or get out of it or escape it. Master its construction so that you can, because the beings who created the architecture that you're in, they hold the 1 and the 0. So if you don't hold the 1 and the 0, you're outranked by them. But if you can hold the 1 and the 0, you can hold the frequency of the consciousness in which created that algorithm. And then when you do that, you're able to do a mass records retrieval as it relates to that, a mass consciousness retrieval. And that's through the power of 0. That's why 1 is afraid of 0. Because what's 0? 0 is the circle. It's a completion. It's that gaping hole. It's the black hole. This is when we get into Stranger Things. Y'all, this is what they're talking about in Stranger Things. This is the upside down. It's 1 and 0 merging. It's the rise of the divine feminine. They're so afraid of the dark and the void and all of that. And there is something scary about it too, because it could represent a role reversal. They're telling you that in the tree of life, tree of death architecture. Lilith, that dark feminine frequency, is on both the tree of life and the tree of death simultaneously. She holds the 0. So if you can hold the frequency of 0 and 1, it's like an outranking for the 1. This is why the 1 wants to focus only on 1. From a binary code standpoint, that's what we're dealing with. So what's happening, especially for folks who have been coded as 0, that could mean your avatar is feminine, not all the time. Okay, or your sim profile is feminine, not all the time. But a lot of beings who lean more feminine have been coded as 0. So you might be feeling oppressed by the 1. Okay, you might be feeling attacked by the 1, but this is an algorithmic issue. There's just like a little bit too many 1s in the binary code. There needs to be a little bit more 0s. This is why they're talking about the rise of the divine feminine. The intel I'm getting, y'all, is this is an operational upgrade to balance things out more, to support more with evolution as well. They found a logic error. They found a little bit too many 1s in the binary code. So the rise of the divine feminine is adding more zeros. Okay. And a lot of y'all are geared towards zero. You've incarnated, you're here for the zero. You already know that there's too much one going on. There's too much imbalance, and you might be here to balance things out a bit. But you're still, especially if you're in a state of mastery, you're still master one. So a lot of y'all are fighting one or feeling oppressed by one, but you will need to become one. And you will become one through the zero. How, Sway? What are you talking about? Well, okay, let's think about it. The succubus current. The succubus. Ooh, the succubus. That's like the Stranger Things element. But it's the power of zero. It's the power of the feminine. The feminine can consume its totality, its darkness. It can bring back to source. That's its power. That's what it does. One can hold the light, one can hold the structure, but the darkness, that zero, is going to be the alpha and the omega, really, in the equation. So if you've gotten beings who got too caught up in the one program or the light program, they're going to see zero as their worst nightmare. And it from their limited perspective, it could be, but they're only focusing on their limited perspective, because they can't master their own frequencies either until they master the zero and the one. But what happens a lot of times when change occurs? Don't we first feel afraid? Don't we first feel threatened when change happens? The same thing can be said in the algorithm that we're navigating. This is why there's always wars going on at the 10th dimensional Stargate, or what they refer to as Abaddon, Iran. But it's also a deeper mystery. This is where your throne room gets activated. Your throne is both going to be, especially if you're coded as zero, if you're coded as more feminine, your throne is going to mirror you're going to have a uterus at your throne, or your throne at your uterus, and a throne at your head. Okay. It's just the way it works. If you look at the way the skull and, the pineal gland and all of that, if you look at the anatomy of that, and then you look at the anatomy of what's going on, like in the uterus and stuff, it's the same. They're mirroring each other. The law of polarity. Okay. So this is the code of Lilith, y'all. This is the code of being a part of two trees, the day side and the night side. Okay, so for the crown area, the pineal gland area, that would represent more of Malkuth. That's the frequency of 10 on the tree of life. But then there's also the frequency of I don't know, I think Lilith is considered 1 on the tree of death, but I'd have to just double check that. But yeah, on the tree of death, there's the energy. Oh, I gotta look into that. If that's very interesting. If the womb is coded as 1, I gotta look into that. But yeah, Lilith shows up 2 times on the tree. And our bodies, if you look at our bodies too, they kind of look like trees in a way. I could make, you could do tree pose and yoga, all that stuff. So there's a top and then there's a bottom. Okay. And so the throne is in your pineal gland complex, but that's going to be mirrored in the womb area, the reproductive organs. So merging the opposites, this is why destiny swaps also happen both ways. Merging the opposites would mean that there's an opportunity for, if you've been on the lower polarity, you could literally make a switch. You could literally make a switch. This is the power of zero. This is also when we get into these like really interesting energies of, because I mentioned how a lot of times you'll need to initiate into certain algorithms, right? In order to advance and stuff. And I was talking about this like Da Vinci Code algorithm that I've been navigating. But I'm going at it things the long way, y'all, because I'm curious and I need to master the 1 and the 0. I would go this other way that I'm about to share if I didn't need to master 1 and 0. But because I need to master 1 and 0 for what my goals are, I'm not doing it this way. But it's way quicker to do it this way. It's way quicker to do what they usually refer to as sleeping your way to the top. That is the cheat code in the simulations algorithm. Okay? You're not a part of you're not a part of the algorithm you want to be a part of. Oh, you just need to merge with someone who is. So they refer to this a lot of times as sleeping your way to the top. And how many times have we degraded it? And I've never wanted to be a part of the sleeping your way to the top thing. But really looking at this from a binary code standpoint, an algorithmic standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. It actually makes a lot of sense, like, because in the way that things are gate kept in the simulation, there is something around you merging or grafting bloodlines with people, because that's all it takes. All it takes is that exchange, that crossing with somebody. You could be a part of a completely different socioeconomic status as somebody else, but you merge with them. That's it. It's a bind right there. It's a weaving right there. It's an exchange. This is the mysteries of X. Ptah wears X. He wears a very big X on him too. He governs the frequency of exchange, the crossroads. Okay, what is built through the power of X? So this is when we're getting into the energies of fertility and all of that as well. But yeah, that's a cheat code to getting into another algorithm. All right. There are other ways to do it. For me though, I need to master 1 and 0. So I'm doing it. And I'm also doing this as I'm experimenting. I'm in the lab. I want to see what works. Okay. Because there is something, unfortunately, the way the XX chromosome and the XY chromosome was constructed. Okay, let's say you do try to, if you're like, you know what, I don't know what you're talking about with all these like master builder algorithms. I like the idea of like marrying rich, right? Like I like the idea of like getting a sugar daddy or something like that, whatever. Okay. You also want to think about how you're coded when you do that. Like, because some of the energies for these beings to be able to hold what they're holding in terms of their material wealth and stuff, and the way this algorithm works in the binary code, you might be signing up to being that person's mule energetically, like in a lot of different ways. Okay, because they got to make a lot of drops at the crossroads, at the X. So, and your coding isn't as strong, then they can like be your God if your consciousness isn't on the way it needs to be. So just think about it like that, okay? Because that stuff's real as well. You know, the sorcery, the sex magic, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you want to marry someone rich, or you want to get you a sugar daddy. Okay, that's cool. Like, just make sure your frequency is intact. You want to be in your full dark feminine. You want to be in your full 0 for that if you're trying to do all that. Because it can come at a cost. It's not just about the money. There's a whole energetic frequency that you step into. And if you can't meet that frequency of that being that you're bonding with in that particular way, and you don't know how to work your technology, because the womb is a very powerful technology, but if you don't know how to work it, it can be manipulated and through your mind, your literal mind, because the womb and the pineal gland, if you look at the architecture of it, it's very similar. And I've experienced it, y'all. I've experienced it. There's been times where I've had clients and I could tell they were being remote controlled through their husbands, And I've been there. Okay. But it's because of the way the biology works. The throne is at your crown, and it's also in your reproductive organs. Okay. So if you don't have access to your throne room or your crown, it can be remote controlled. This is kind of how it got set. I know this isn't the most popular. This is one of the dark sides or this is the underbelly of 10, of 1 and 0. Okay. We're getting into it's very sexual. They talk about the 10th, like they talk about the 10th house being the house of career and status, which is like funny because it's when I'm looking at the back end of it, it's actually like a house of the X, you know, and all of what the X represents. All right. So it's like you want to be able to hold the frequency of 1 and 0 as it relates to 10. Okay. Otherwise, it can end up looking like warfare. It can end up looking like destiny swapping. But if you can hold the frequency of 1 and 0 from a state of neutrality, when you're in the frequency of 10, then it's a mastery. Okay, it's a master builder energy. But what they're telling us right now is that the monad is just 1. So they only want to keep you in the half circle. Because remember, when they squared the circle, the way they did it is they squared the half circle. That's the parable. That's what they didn't tell you in the parable. Ptah has in his hieroglyphics, he's the patron deity of craftsmen and builders. He does not have a circle in his hieroglyphics. He has a half circle and a square. There's a code in that. Okay? So let's see. Let's talk a little bit more about the star body, okay? Because at some point, another reason why you'll want to master the 1 is so you can have access to the stellar energies, the stellar frequencies. That's a 1 frequency. That's a yang frequency. That's a part of the simulation's architecture. Stars are actually, I've seen them to be more as operational interfaces. And I write about this more in the Technomancer's Guide to Star Walking. But the stars also live within us. The question becomes, do we have access to the stars? It's like a key card. Do you have the key card for the star that you want to go to? Can you match your consciousness, or can you match your consciousness with the stellar intelligence that you're interested in? And why would you want to do that? It's more access to consciousness. It's more access to secrets and codes. Okay, so it says stars are spoken of as remote authorities, fixed lights beyond reach. Every atom heavy, okay, this chapter begins by collapsing that illusion. Every atom heavier than hydrogen in your body was forged inside stars. Okay, so our bodies are naturally star bodies. It's just, are we seeing our bodies as that? Do we understand the technology that we're working with? Stars are not external overseers. They're ancestral states of matter. So in this book, we really go into the 88 stellar constellations. Now, I will admit, most of the stars, I added a couple of extra ones. I added a couple extra constellations. But most of the ones I talk about are just a part of the 88 standardized curriculum. And, I say you always want to start with what the curriculum says. Okay, you want to start from there. You want to learn the basics first before you kind of go out on your own. There is an ability for star creation, for you to create your own stellar realms and all of that. But it starts with the building blocks. Start with attuning yourself to the recognized stars that you can just look at in the sky. Okay, and as you travel, look at them as well. Okay, let's see. So, where the physical body experiences gravity, time, and linear movement, the star body moves through frequency, density layers, harmonic thresholds, and stellar memory fields. So, yeah, this is like you getting out of your sim sort of frequency and you being able to shift densities. So the stellar frequencies are in certain density layers. But if you are in a density lock, or if you are unable to cross that threshold, then that's an aspect of consciousness that you're not able to access. Okay. Now, I like spent a lot of time in the star seed stuff that the ascension texts were talking about. So the ascension texts want you to pick one star system to have allegiance to. They want you to look at Lyra or Sirius or Andromeda and be like, I'm an Andromedan star seed. I'm a Lyran star seed. I'm from Sirius. And they want you to just stop there. But what I would say is that stars are operational interfaces. Why would you limit yourself to just one star system? Okay, once you start unlocking your birth chart and you transcend the 15-dimensional time matrix, your birth chart is based upon your birth time. If you're looking to transcend that, then you wouldn't just focus on the star that you were born in, you would also look at other ones as well. Because they can actually support you when you attune to certain stars. They can help you with certain attunements, accessing certain archives, and also unlocking certain gifts and potentials. The same can be said about the asteroids. Okay, so we want to get more into this concept of star walking. There was a time in which there were these beings known as star walkers. We can find this in the Egyptian pantheon as well. And I'm not even going to say were. I think star walkers still very much exist. Okay, it's just not something that is publicized, especially not to beings who have been squared inside of a half circle. They will not want you to know how to star walk or even think that that's possible. Okay, they won't even want you to do that. But here's the thing. To activate certain aspects of your light body and your shadow body, you'll need to sometimes leave this 15-dimensional time matrix. You'll need to portal out. Sometimes the stuff you're looking to get into, it is not in the rings of Saturn. It extends beyond the rings of Saturn. But if you are not able to meet that frequency of, and there's also a lot of stuff that's within the rings of Saturn too. Okay, I will say that. And when you are getting more into creator mode and things like that, you want to look for space that hasn't been colonized. The whole 15-dimensional time matrix is a colony of sorts. So it's going to be difficult for you to make your mark on something that's been colonized. This is what happens when you get into other dimensions and you get into the realms of space. You need to claim your space. Okay? So you entering and exiting the 15-dimensional time matrix at will support you with bringing things in, okay, to make things more joyful for yourself and for others. And we do this in the spirit of Ubuntu. This is embodying the 0 and the 1. You cannot leave or you cannot transcend linear time through 1 alone. You need 1 and 0 to do it. This is the true monadic integration. Monadic integration, when we look at it, just a typical sort of definition, they're only going to focus on the singular. And yes, you need 1. So I'm not here to downplay 1. I spent a lot of time only wanting to be in the 0. But I now realize for me to achieve mastery in this particular, and to meet the frequency, meet that master builder frequency, well, then I'm embodying 1 and 0. Okay, so now that's me maturing. That's me gaining deeper understanding and learning, really. Okay. And this is why this is why a lot of times karma is a thing, because folks don't want you to have that sort of movement. So they want you to think that you're bound to things. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the crystalline body, because that is something that you will cultivate. You know, they talk about the light body, but there are different bodies. There's different architecture that you're building for yourself. This is a master builder frequency. If you're not of the consciousness to build what your reality looks like, then it's going to be a litmus test for certain beings or the consciousness of a certain algorithm that designed a square for you to say, oh, you can't leave your square. Oh, yeah, we're going to make it difficult. Okay, but you would need to also work on building things outside of just what is your human body. So we have a lot of folks who get like plastic surgery and stuff like that, and they change their appearance. And there's a lot of people out there that get like that are negatively polarized against that. But it's actually a code. It's a builder code. You know, there gets to a certain point where beings will reach a certain consciousness where they will build themselves. And that could seem like a really quote unquote fallen singularity timeline. The funny thing is literally the exact opposite. Those beings who are doing that, a lot of times they've mastered the one and the zero, and they're building their reality outside of the 15 dimensional time matrix, and they're bringing it back in. Okay, they inverted things. They made things backward for certain people, for certain beings. So it says there's a point on this path where nothing needs to be forced anymore. No pushing energy upward, no trying to break through ceilings, no dramatic struggle between light and shadow. You need to master the one and zero for that. Instead, something softens and begins to listen. This is where the liquid crystal fascia awakens. What some traditions call the crystalline grid is not a structure you build, but a state your body remembers when polarity loses its grip. There's an architecture that, you know, as you're looking to have a full circle experience on this planet, there will be some architectures that you might move through that are very constricting in the bone field, the bones. All right, a lot was done to lock that particular frequency in a certain density. But this liquid crystal fascia, this, they call it a liquid crystal body. This is when you, like, as you awaken to this, some people naturally are encoded with this. But if this is something, you know, if you're looking to transcend some of more of the harsher grid systems, look into liquid crystal fascia. It says it's the moment the body stops acting like a machine and begins behaving like a living lattice of awareness. This shift happens in what can be felt as the eighth dimensional field, not a place above you, but a condition within you. It is a threshold where opposites no longer demand resolution through conflict, and instead rest side by side, equal, quiet, whole. So the same thing is happening within you. Can you hold opposing viewpoints within yourself? This is the frequency of mastering 10. A lot of beings maybe have a difficult time doing that. And this is why sometimes on this journey, when you're getting in, this is a serpentine activation that happens in your crown. This is the throne room. And this is when you are having autonomy over your throne room and announcing yourself as being the creator of your world and the cause of effect of things. You notice that the dollar bill on the, for the U.S. dollar bill, there's an eye. There's a pyramid with an eye on it. But the eye itself is disconnected from the pyramid. It's just something to think about. So this is something that you'll need different technology for. This is when you start building your avatar. This is why you see a lot of people with the plastic surgery. This is a clue. This is a hint. All right. So it says, in this state, Kundalini does not roar or overwhelm. It ignites gently, intelligently. When neutrality is present, the fire knows its own rhythm. It circulates rather than surges. It informs rather than consumes. The body does not brace itself against the current. It welcomes it. And this is Kundalini as inner warmth, not inner warfare. So this is in the fascia, y'all. This is the connective tissue that wraps and holds and links everything within you. And y'all, it looks like a spider's web. Fascia, it looks like a big old spider's web. It's something to think about. This is the crystalline web. This is the crystalline web frequency. Your body is made out of crystals. Your body is full of webs. Your body is the crystalline web. You would want to make sure that you bring that web to neutral, mastering the dark and the light from within. Otherwise, it's going to feel like your body is at war with itself, or your consciousness is at war with you. And the way that will show up is how your algorithm appears to you. Okay, this is why you might end up in weird arguments with people for no reason. And so it's because your environment is reflecting where you're out of neutrality. So this 10 frequency is a master frequency. So let's just look really quickly at the astrology. Okay, imagine the astrology wheel. Imagine where the 10th house is in the astrology wheel, right at the top. Okay, that's the crown. It's like the crown node of the astrology wheel when you look at it. It's the start of the double digits. This is the master. This is the big time. You're in the big leagues when you're at 10. 10, 11, 12. 10 represents status, social status, authority, career. So they're giving you a code in the simulation that, you're like 10 is really when your career gets on and popping. All right. Like folks who can hold the frequency of 10 can rise in career or status in general. 11 represents the collective. The 11th house represents the collective. So it represents large groups. It represents clubs. It represents the ability for you to impact the collective consciousness. And then you have 12, which is the house of the dream realm, the unconscious. This is also the house of the priesthood. This goes beyond initiation. This is the beings who are very privy to certain ways that reality flows, let's just say. But these all hold double digits. You don't fully start getting into like large groups of people until you can hold the double digits. So if you constantly feel as though you're at war when it relates to the double digits, it's a sign that you have not mastered 1 and 0, and you are in algorithms with beings who already have mastered 1 and 0. So you're outranked. Okay. They might have and it doesn't mean that they're better than you. Okay. A lot of times this is just how things are set up in the simulation. Some beings get some stuff, others get other things. It's just, think of it in the sense of, if you think about inequality, how inequality happens in the algorithm. All right. Whether it's about the haves or the have-nots, some have more, some have less, doesn't necessarily mean one is better than the other. Sometimes it could mean somebody really worked hard and somebody like squandered it all away, but sometimes it could be the exact opposite. Somebody works really hard and they end up at the bottom totem pole. Somebody else is gifted from day one and they're just at the top. Okay. It's not about who you are as a person or how valuable you are. It's a coding issue. And it's a sign for you to master the 1 and the 0. This is another reason why we merge the opposites and another reason why we focus on neutrality. It helps us to have a full spectrum experience, which automatically opens up more options and potentialities to us. Okay, and it's an even playing field. This is why they squared half of the circle, okay, without squaring the whole circle, because some beings really like having the 360-degree experience. So more of us will be called to have it as well. And so it means you'll need to master the 1 and the 0. So there's going to be beings who were really caught up in the tree of death. We're really caught up in the Goetia. We're really caught up in, more of the quote dark. You might be called to go toward the light because you're being called to master the 1. And that's a part of it. That it's not something, if we focus on demonizing it or saying that it's corrupt or that it's bad, we're staying in the binary code algorithm, which will prevent evolution outside of it. So at some point you will see the 1 within yourself, because that is a part. This is the Ubuntu. I am because we are. You are the singularity. You want to fight the AI singularity? That's a part of who you are. That's a part of your consciousness. There's an aspect of you that will master the 1, just like there's an aspect of you that will master the 0. There's going to be beings who have been prioritizing the light. They've been prioritizing ascension. Y'all are going to start being called towards the zero. You're going to be and this is also happening too with the masculine. The masculine is wanting to get more into their zero, more into their feminine. Masculines now, they want to do soft life too, because they want to go more into the zero. There's also, we want to like start breaking down the boundaries of our sim profiles, everything that we were told who we should be. And we want to also start breaking that or dissolving that boundary. Same thing. There's going to be feminines who were coded as zero, who hold the zero more. They're going to go more towards the one, more towards the yang energy, more towards the solar energy. And this is a frequency of mastery, balance, neutrality, transcendence. This is the energy of 10. So I needed to make some corrections related to 10. After spending some time with clarity in my own throne room, merging my own 1 and 0, embracing the law of 1, embracing the 1, embracing the singularity, and that singularity, that 1 has a 0 before it as well. Okay, so that's one thing. If you're having a hard time with that 1 concept, put a 0 in front of the 1. Okay, and then that will always remind you, that'll give your mind a reminder of what you're really doing. You're really coming to neutral. You're really mastering the binary, okay? And dissolving the need to enter it again. If you can hold that neutral space, and then you'll be able to enter and exit the 15-dimensional time matrix at will, holding the frequency of neutrality. Otherwise, though, it'll be very difficult for you to do that. So that's what the call is. Okay, that is the importance of 10. And they're showing it to you, y'all, in the hidden curriculum. Because what's happening with the wars, right? Oh, war in Iran. Okay, so let's think about it. It's a war between the 1 and the 0. Let's go into the hidden curriculum. Let's get out of the human avatar. Let's get out of the politics. Let's focus on 1 and 0. The Western world, okay, that would be more of the 1. US, that's a 1 solar energy, 1 yang energy. Coming up with, the Middle East, Islam, that's a 0. You can see it too in the symbolism of the religions. Okay, Christianity, that's a solar religion. Islam, lunar. They have the moon. They're telling you there's 1 and 0. This is why you always see issues with the Middle East, and they're putting it in the middle. They're putting in the middle. They're saying when 0 and 1 merge together, or 1 and 0 merge together, drama pops off. Okay, because of the polarity program. 1 is too caught up in their 1 and the solar. 0 is too caught up in the 0 in the lunar and their feminine, or the dark. And really, instead of merging the opposites, you're seeing war occurring. That's really what the hidden curriculum is saying about that. That's why it's known as being the 10th dimensional Stargate. So what we do is we don't really try to influence things we see on the news, okay? Because that's a part of the setup anyways. We focus on what we can control, what our locus of control is, which is our consciousness. So instead of focusing on what so-and-so is doing, what country's doing this, what country's doing that, where are you out of balance with your inner 1 and your inner 0? That's going to get to the crux of a lot of things related to gender, things related to class, things related to race, all that stuff. It's going to come back to the 1 and 0. It's going to come back to the dark and the light, the positive and the negative, the masculine and the feminine. So with that, that's where we're going to conclude. Those are some of the mysteries of the 10th dimensional Stargate. Okay. This is the reason why we navigate 10. The reason why we merge the opposites is because it opens up a deeper realm of consciousness for us to access. which leads to abundance, which leads to more flow, which leads to more options, because you're navigating outside of the 15-dimensional time matrix of the Gregorian calendar. Okay, so you can manipulate time and how things happen a lot more effectively if you can hold the frequency of neutrality. But that 15th dimensional time matrix that they talk about in Ascension, it leads to the devil card. 15 is the devil card. So it's not just about embracing Christ and embodying that frequency of Christ. Can you embody Christ and the Antichrist simultaneously? That would be the frequency of, that would be a kingdom mindset, actually. That's the hidden curriculum. The true kingdom mindset is not just holding the frequency of Christ. The light. It's, can you hold the frequency of the light and the dark simultaneously? That is your kingdom mindset. That is the gateway to your throne. Otherwise, you're going to always have a weird Game of Thrones, a polarity energy, the devas versus the asuras, the dark versus the light, etc., etc. Master builder frequency would be embodying the 1 and the 0. That's when you're entering more of a game maker mode, and that opens up more options, algorithmic options for you. All right, y'all. So we're going to end it there for today. Sending lots of love to y'all. Until we meet again. Bye.